The clock is ticking for one of the world's most popular social media applications. US President Donald Trump accuses TikTok's parent company ByteDance of sharing user data with the Chinese government, a charge the company refutes. Trump is threatening to ban the platform's operations unless it's acquired by a US company.
And there is enormous bipartisan support. We are not keeping TikTok in its current form, where the app can send back information and location on 100 million Americans.
With restrictions looming, Microsoft is swooping in with a bid to buy out TikTok's operations in the US and other countries.
Microsoft fully appreciates the importance of addressing the president's concerns. It is committed to acquiring TikTok subject to a complete security review and providing proper economic benefits to the United States, including the United States Treasury. Microsoft will move quickly to pursue discussions with TikTok's parent company ByteDance in a matter of weeks, and in any event completing these discussions no later than September 15, 2020.
The US makes up 10% of TikTok's total user base, and it's expected to generate $500 million in revenue there this year. The company says the tie-up with Microsoft will ensure the app remains available to these valuable users.
I'm also proud of our 1,500 US employees who work on this app every day and the additional 10,000 jobs that we're bringing into this country over the next 3 years. I'm thrilled about our US Creator Fund, where we just announced our $1 billion fund to support our creators. And when it comes to safety and security, we're building the safest app because we know it's the right thing to do. So we appreciate the support. We're here for the long run.
Chinese officials say Washington's national security concerns over the app are unfounded. It also accuses the US government of forcing international companies to hand over control to US competitors.
We call on some individuals in the U.S. to provide an open, fair, and non-discriminatory environment for each market and its investments in operations in the U.S., to stop politicizing economic and trade issues, and to stop abusing the concept of national security to promote discriminatory and exclusive policies.
US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says similar actions will be taken against other Chinese tech companies in coming days, a move that could further worsen the already deteriorating ties between the world's largest economies. Mubin Nasir, TRT World.
Well, for more on this, Jonathan Broughton joins us now from London. He's Managing Director at Workshare Consulting. And joining us from Washington is Anna Ashton, Advisory Services Director at the US-China Business Council. Welcome to you both. Jonathan, if I could start with you, we've all seen just how popular TikTok videos are. Celebrities, kids, influencers, everyone seems to be using it nowadays. But do you believe that the app does pose a security threat, as the US Trump administration and the Democrats, for that matter, are suggesting?
I think there's sort of two ways to answer that question. First off, can any video media platform or app pose a national security risk? Absolutely. Even if we're looking within Western European and US countries, we know for a fact that from 2013, social media platforms and video providers do provide some quantity of data and user information to governments. So it's not very conspiratorial to suggest that a video platform may be providing information. Certainly where that's legislated in Western markets, we know that it has happened. Whether it's happening at the scale that the Trump administration is suggesting is another question. It does seem very inflammatory, some of the accusations that have been made, with very little substantiation.
Okay, and what do you make of Donald Trump's ultimatum for ByteDance to sell its US operations or leave the country? Do you think it is driven by this genuine concern for user data, or is it more about geopolitics?
Thanks, Oscar. I think it's probably a little bit of both. Certainly, there's been talk for many months now about user data and personal data privacy, and the fact that even if TikTok is operating in the US and is storing its data mostly in other places, the US or third countries, that technically it could still be asked to send its data back to China if the Chinese government wanted it to. So that concern has a legitimate basis. But of course, there's also this atmosphere of constantly intensifying rhetoric right now in the bilateral relationship. And we're in the middle of a US presidential election where China has become a hot button issue. So I think that's a piece of the picture that we can't ignore.
Jonathan, when we look at the US example with Apple, Apple has been asked a number of times by authorities to hand over user data for criminal investigations and the like, but because of the strong privacy I guess, protections that are in place, Apple has been able to refuse those requests even in serious criminal investigations. Whereas in China, there is this perception that perhaps the government can be more forceful against private companies. And indeed, China has exerted a lot of influence in the tech space, banning things like Twitter, Facebook, and even Google. Do you believe then that there is, I guess, a genuine cause for concern when it comes to Chinese government influence over apps such as TikTok?
I think it's entirely legitimate to be concerned about the app in itself. If we're looking at cases where we know that there has been foreign influence using social media or video platforms, we can look no further than, say, the Russia report, which was just released in the UK, which effectively indicated that social media was used by effectively Russian agents to affect a range of political issues. So regardless of whether you have control over an app, whether you are involved in its development, whether you can control where that data is flowing, it can be used to influence politics and so forth. So it's not unreasonable at all to ask those kind of questions. But again, the way that China in general interacts with asking certain companies to report data to the Chinese government isn't that dissimilar to, say, the US PRISM project or GCHQ's Tempora system. There are all ways of accessing user data that's stored, in or outside the country, but related to data which is passing through that country's borders.
Now, Anna, a move like this can be compared to the forced nationalization of certain assets that we see happening in several countries that I guess some US politicians might see as socialist. But now we have the US doing something quite similar, the only difference being that instead of being nationalized, it's going to a US publicly listed company, in this case, Microsoft. Do you believe that something like this could really endanger business confidence in the US, particularly among Chinese firms?
I think that there are many factors right now that are endangering business confidence in the US and endangering US businesses' confidence in their ability to do business with China. The reality is that things are just incredibly unpredictable and unstable. The bilateral relationship's in the middle of a strategic shift. It's difficult to know exactly how things are going to shake out. But for example, just on TikTok itself, on Friday, the president first told reporters that he was going to ban TikTok's operations in the US. Then a little while later said that he was simply going to ask ByteDance to divest TikTok to a US company. And then we heard the president say today that he was happy to have a company like Microsoft acquire it. But at the same time, we heard White House senior advisor Peter Navarro say that Microsoft was not an acceptable company to acquire it because Microsoft has operations in China and the Chinese government uses Microsoft software. So exactly which outcome are we going to see? I think we don't actually know yet. And that's indicative of the lack of certainty more broadly in the business relationship between our two countries.
And Jonathan, just quickly, we know TikTok is hugely popular, roughly 500 million users worldwide, 80 million of those in the US. Do you believe that TikTok will survive this?
I do believe so. I feel that they've given a lot of ground. Even before this current situation blew up, they were very careful in making themselves look more friendly, sort of distancing them away from their Chinese roots, relocating their headquarters to London, appointing a new American CEO. So it appears they're very open to making TikTok very distant and perhaps a separate entity in the international market to ByteDance. So I believe they will eventually concede, reach agreement, and TikTok will survive as we know it.
Okay, Jonathan Broughton in London and Anna Ashton in Washington, thank you again for joining us on Money Talks.